So, I actually had a different video planned for today, but in light of everything that's happened, I decided I would rather talk about this. Now, I do not want to make myself out to be any kind of specialist in this area. I don't want it to sound like I'm any more educated or well advised in this area than many other people. In fact, I would say that people who experience racial discrimination probably have a lot more knowledge and a lot more experience and awareness of the issues I am about to discuss than I do. The main reason I wanted to tackle this myself is that I feel that the more people who are discussing this issue, the more likely we are to see change. And I very strongly think that we need to see change. Now, one thing that I am intensely grateful for is the fact that we do have video evidence of the murder of George Floyd. I do feel like this has made a huge difference in the discussion of what has happened, and I very much hope that this will make a massive difference in the trial to come. I do feel like that is why the discussion around the protests, by and large, what I have seen, has not focused around people trying to make out his murder to be his own fault, but has rather been people saying that they would support these protests if they weren't getting so violent. And believe me, I am sure many people wish that things were not getting so violent right now. But I would also like to point out that there have been many protests in the past that were extremely peaceful. Some of them as simple as a football player taking a knee during the national anthem. And people have met such a small gesture of, hey, I'm not feeling so great about how things are going right now. And people have demanded this football player should be thrown off the field. And so much anger and so much vitriol over something that is the most peaceful protest you could possibly do. And I'm not saying that the people making comments like how they don't like the rioting and the looting are being disingenuous. I'm just saying that they should carefully consider the fact that it's really hard to distinguish what the right way to protest is when it seems that everything people try to do, they're being told is the wrong way. But despite that, a lot of these protests have been very peaceful. They've just been people holding signs and chanting. Now, I can't deny there's been a lot of rioting and looting, but I do think we need to ask questions of who are these rioters and looters. Now, I'm not going to try to claim that they're all outside third-party people, but because I honestly don't know that. I don't know enough to say that. But what I do know is that some looters have been identified to be white supremacists. And I do know that some of the other looters who have not been identified have acted extremely suspicious. There was one man in a pink gas mask and a black umbrella who was smashing out the windows of an AutoZone. When he was confronted by protesters, he acted extremely shady. They asked him, "Are you a cop?" He's like, "None of your business," and ran away. And it's like, I don't know who this man was. A lot of people are claiming he's a specific cop. I do not want to repeat that cop's name or make any such claims because, honestly, I don't know enough to make such a statement. But what I do know is that he was not behaving in the way you would expect of a riled up protester. But what we do know is that a lot of the protests have been peaceful until they're met with violence. A lot of reports have been coming out that it's, like I said, it's just chanting, and then they fire rubber bullets directly at people and, tear gas them and cause a huge, massive panic, and things go downhill from there. Things that are calm and peaceful just become chaotic and crazy. I saw one news report of 2 college students that got caught in traffic. So the police actually tased them and dragged them out of their car. People are getting arrested and detained for 24 hours and then released with no charges. When they're detained, they're not being given food. They're not being allowed to use the restroom. They're just sitting there in zip ties the entire time. And that is terrifying. And that is wrong. And we have to ask ourselves, why are our police doing this? Who does it help? Police threatening civilians helps no one. Least of all, the police officers who are doing it. Because the thing is, they are creating their own threat. They are creating their own danger when they do things like this. People break the law when they have no faith in the rule of law. And they're not going to have any faith in the rule of law if someone can get locked up for getting stuck in traffic, when there's brutal force used against people who are not violent criminals. And I think the problem is we have a major issue in the police culture in this country. Former officer Cariel Horn was fired from the police force for pulling her partner's arm off the neck of a suspect he'd been choking. At the same time, there are numerous police officers who are guilty of extremely violent acts and abuses against suspects, who are given a slap on the wrist, who have multiple complaints. Derek Chauvin had 17 complaints against him. His partner had a bunch as well. They both had complaints of using excessive force. They were both still on the team. Many people who are charged with various serious complaints get fired from the force and immediately rehired in another district. And you see very much in our police force a culture of protecting police officers who use too much force and cracking down on the ones who try to pull them back. And so it's little wonder that with 4 police officers there wasn't one who just stopped Derek Chauvin from murdering an innocent man right in front of them. But this culture helps no one. The policemen who are engaging in these intensely violent acts, they're putting all police officers in danger. Because once you do that, you set yourself up as the enemy, as a threat. And once people are threatened, they become a lot more violent, a lot more scared, and a lot more unpredictable. To me, supporting these police officers is like having a construction team that supports members of the construction team who like to get a saw and just saw the rungs of the ladder so that they're unstable and could fall at any moment. This endangers them, it endangers their coworkers, and it endangers random passerbys who could have a construction worker randomly fall on them because the ladder's been sawed to bits. Meanwhile, people who are like, hey, you have to stop sawing these ladder rungs, we're dying here, get kicked off the force. And that's the problem. And I think it'll keep being a problem as long as we have a police force who doesn't see that they are creating their own threat. Yes, their job will always be dangerous, no matter what they do. But if they could become part of their communities, just like police officers used to be part of the communities they served, if they could be a part of that community, if they could be friends and family with the people who they are supposed to serve and protect, if they could see them as equals, then maybe their lives would be a lot safer, and maybe fewer men would die in the field because people wouldn't be afraid of them. People wouldn't lash out at them. And people wouldn't be able to bring themselves to fire at them or light their police cars on fire. There was one man who was killed in Louisville who was known for giving away food to police officers. If you're guilty of something like that, how do you expect your community to react when they see you in the street? And when someone does do the right thing, like Cariol Horn did, how do you expect the community to react when they see you turn on someone like her? Derek Chauvin was one police officer. He was one man. But when people see other police officers reacting violently to peaceful protesters, when they see police officers protecting those who commit violent acts unprovoked, when they see police officers turning on the whistleblowers, turning on people who protect and serve as they should, they're hearing, we support that. That's what we want to do. That's what we think is right. And that is what we need to change. But I acknowledge that even with our system having the issues it does, I don't want people to come away with this thinking that all cops are bad. I don't want them to think, bleep the police. Because there have been some cops, even in light of all this, who have been doing the right thing. In Flint, Michigan, there are heroes like Chris Swanson who joined the protest. In Canton County, New Jersey, Police Chief Wysocki and many, many others in many other cities have been making the right choices and doing the right thing, joining the protests, kneeling with the protesters. And to those police officers, I congratulate you. It's a first step in the right direction. And you are heroes, making people's lives, making the lives of police officers safer, and also making the lives of your community safer. And we need more of that. And we need less of people reacting violently to protesters who are not themselves violent. I do not know what the solution to all this is. I do not know what the answers are. But what I do know is that the solution is not to have protesters who are in front of a church, who include the priest of said church, tear-gassed so that the president can have his picture taken in front of said church with an upside-down Bible. I know that the solution is not to have a president who tells police officers to be rough with suspects when throwing them in the squad car because he's angry about the protests. Protests, by the way, that are protesting that very same sort of rough treatment of suspects. And I know that the solution is not to have Washington, D.C. patrolled by people in unmarked military uniforms. like like we're in some kind of police state now. So I don't know what we should do, but I know that it's definitely not that. I'm I'm going to want to talk a lot more about everything here, about Donald Trump, his leadership, but it's really late. And there are other people who you could watch who know a lot more about this than I do. So I'm gonna go ahead and let you go. Till next time, goodbye.